name is Julie. I am 28 years old. And last year I had a brain aneurysm rupture, and it was just quite an overwhelming experience. And I remember just thinking, well, this is it. I guess if I'm going to die, I'm going to die. And as they wheeled me off into surgery, I remember thinking, if this is going to go wrong, I'd rather be dead than be seriously brain damaged. Because I just didn't want to be brain dead and have loved ones make hard decisions. I didn't want to forget who I was. Sorry, it's quite hard to relive.
I'm Abby, and 8 years ago, I started experiencing the symptoms of a Chiari malformation, a type of cerebellar herniation. I started to experience fatigue and cognitive difficulties. It became hard to function. We didn't get a clear diagnosis for 6.5 years, and when I did, I scheduled a surgery where the herniation was removed, and that was 1 year ago.
A few years back, when I was in my late 20s, I started feeling really weird. I remember to this day I tried gripping a glass. I started to break down in tears because I felt like I was in the wrong body almost. I had multiple set of strokes basically. I only told my parents and my brother and my sister at the time, that what had happened. I didn't post anything to social media or anything like that. I felt like this was something that was very private, something I needed to take care of myself. And I think there was not an element of shame, but I didn't understand why this happened. I've never done a drug in my life, and people were, the first question they asked me was, "Did you do drugs or something like that?" No. So nothing like that.
In 2018, I was diagnosed with cervical cancer, and then during my treatment, something just happened where I reacted quite badly to the first lot of chemo. I had a really low immune system. It led to a brain infection, which then led to a stroke. They said, "You're not going to make it."
The problem was I was trying to hide the things that I'd lost. I was trying to hide what was a problem. Okay, my memory's really bad, and I frequently forget what I've done. I'd had this stroke, or these 2 strokes, and it had a major effect on my body. If it's not obvious that you have deficiencies, it can be very hard to get support.
Luke went in to try and get into a friend who was in a neighbouring room, and it was an unsteady balcony, and it kind of the thing moved, and then Luke fell and hit his head.
I was unconscious for a long time. I can't remember anything really.
I don't know if you know, Tyler, we're identical twins, so that was I think particularly tough thing for Luke, especially in the early days when he had almost like a measuring stick of how much that injury has impacted him.
So I was moving into my new flat, and I felt a little bit funny, I felt a little bit queasy, and I had a bit of a headache, and I kind of just put it down to not having my tea and being hungry and stressed and moving, and I just all of a sudden just decked it and fell over and sort of hit my head. But I remember a nurse, somebody talking to me and saying, you're going to have an operation. They're going to have to take out a piece of your skull. You've had a stroke, you're really poorly. One of the saddest parts was I can't even explain it, but I knew that my leg would come back and I would be able to walk. I just instinctively knew that was going to happen eventually. But I really felt like my arm, it didn't feel like my arm. It felt like it was never going to come back. And my dad, I remember my dad got really upset this one time they come to visit, and I just said to him, I was like, what if one day I want to have kids and I can't even hold my own baby? And then my dad just cried, and he was just like, yeah, so it's making me emotional. So. And he was like, you will, like, of course you will. You can, you'll find a way, like, you'll figure it out.
So yeah, when I got home from hospital, I felt a bit lost, to be honest. After brain injuries, your brain just requires so much more energy than it did before to do simple tasks. And then it drains every bit of energy that you have for any other activity in the day. I remember when I got home, I couldn't walk up the stairs anymore. It was upsetting and frustrating because every day was sort of the same. I could not watch TV because it felt like it was just too much for my brain to cope with. I could not read. I just couldn't do anything. And it's been so difficult and quite emotional journey, quite an exhausting one. But every day I still do it. I still push to have that life back that I had before.
I would say that one of the biggest developments that has allowed for me to reach the point in recovery where I am was a therapist that specialized in working with chronically ill. A lot of the work we did was figuring out how all of these, what felt like fractured pieces of myself, coalesced into Abby, and who that was, and also the life that I was living, whether I got better or not, was one worth living. That my brain and body didn't have to be healed for me to be whole.
Every time I walked in, you're so young, and I think that they were having a hard time kind of like, dealing with it too. And especially when I went to physical therapy, all the physical therapy and all the kind of, I guess, structure around it was really made for elderly people. It was definitely extremely physically challenging time, certainly a mentally challenging time, because I think that one thing that they don't speak about enough is, just the weird, with the stroke certainly causes strange chemical imbalance in my brain that caused me to be, really emotional, and it was just a crash course in, biology and human anatomy and trying to figure myself back out again.
I was 38 when I had my stroke, which is a huge shock to somebody to think you could even have a stroke at that age. My family were great, but they also had their own thing. They had kids, they had jobs, so they couldn't always help out, and I live on my own. So then it got to the point where I just thought, I don't know how to get help, and every time I tried to reach out, they would give me the wrong information, so it would be a fatigue course or something. And I'm thinking, I don't know how to speak yet, I don't know how to understand. My cognitive skills had disappeared, so I didn't know how to. If someone said turn left, I wouldn't turn left, I had no idea which way to go. And I think they just lost me in the system, because every time I try and reach out to them, they'll say, oh, you've got an 18-week waiting list. And yeah, so it's that kind of thing where you just got lost, and then you had to sort of fix it yourself. And I remember thinking every day, it was like, just survive.
The NHS is overwhelmed, and I don't think the NHS would be able to provide the care that I had. And one of the things is that care is patchy around the country. It's not as good in this place as it is in that place.
But there was certain occasions where I was getting a WhatsApp call from Luke at in the middle of the night, like, I don't know what's happened to me, and he had fallen off his chair, and this point his mobility was really bad, and he didn't know what, that he was trying to call for help, they weren't coming, and we kind of figured out that this place was really under-resourced, understaffed, and they'd give a timetable of stuff that he was doing, but he was basically kind of sat looking at a wall for the majority of time, and it's at such a critical point in your recovery. Your brain's kind of getting new pathways. Stimulation is the most important thing, really, and it doesn't matter where that comes from. That could be, trying to paint, like you mentioned earlier, or take up a hobby or something like this, but unfortunately the model, it's very. This is not an uncommon story that someone ends up in a place like this. So yeah, we try to get him out of that place as soon as possible.
One of the big obstacles for us was because I was young. I feel like there was less support that was geared around people my age. Like, I went to quite a few stroke support groups and they were all kind of like 60 plus, and I just felt like I was really sticking out. When you had a stroke, you really feel like ashamed and that people are judging you. And I've had a lot of comments before of like, if I'm going to a pub, people think that I'm drunk, because at least earlier they did, because I was kind of wobbly on buses and things. I think people would always just assume something negative about you.
Because I initially decided to share my story because Amelia sharing her story and creating the charity really changed my life. Because when I was in the hospital, and at first when they were explaining to me what happened, I was thinking, oh, this is what happened to Amelia Clark, because I had read her story when she had published it. And I was just amazed at her courage, and I thought, this is, such a horrific thing for someone her age to have to go through. But I mean, when I had read it, I never in a million years thought that would happen to me. But it gave me a point of familiarity, because when I was sort of not really understanding what was happening, I thought, oh, Amelia Clark had this, she's okay. And those nights in the hospital when I was in pain and I was alone and I was scared, I kept, thinking of her and thinking, she did this. She had a horrible experience in the hospital. She had a horrible recovery, but she recovered. And I keep kind of thinking about that. And, even now as I'm trying to get my life back, I keep remembering, that she did. And that if she could do it, then I could do it. And her story it helped me beyond words. So I thought, if I share my story, and even if there's one person out there who reads it and gets some comfort from it, then it would be worth it.
These events that raise awareness for brain injury are so important, because brain injury is all around you and most people don't see it. And a lot of that is because survivors feel like they have to walk this tightrope of performing wellness so that they will be accepted by society. Raising awareness is a really important step in helping in getting to a place where survivors feel like they can just exist as they are and be accepted and seen without having to paste wallpaper over all the issues that they face.
What I can speak to is I really wish there was more comprehensive, full life cycle, full circle kind of care of, mental health, the physical side of things, and what have you. I think anything that kind of lifts that veil of shame on people that have gone through things, and I got walk with a little bit of a limp now, and it's something that bothered me for years, and I could give a shit less about it now, But I think finding out, even Amelia Clark herself, went through that and was very public about it. It was a sense of, this happens to more. This isn't such an anomaly. This isn't such a crazy thing, that there is a group of people out there that have gone through the same thing that I have. And everything can be very overwhelming. But when there's a sense of camaraderie there, and especially one that's so public, I think that it caused a sense of comfort in a way.
I was literally told I was going to die, and then I was told I was going to be in palliative care, and then I was going through my cancer, and I still managed to somehow come out of it. But I think for me it's a huge thing about having a positive attitude. So even how terrible you feel and how worried you are, it's thinking, look how far I've come, and then how much further you can go from that point.
I still don't know how I was lucky enough to be contacted by SameYou. I suspect it was the doctors. The doctors who were treating me suggested Paul might benefit from this. If I could find whoever it was who suggested me, I'd probably frighten them, but I'd go and give them a big hug and a big kiss and offer to cook them a dinner or whatever they want, because it was fantastic. And without it, I don't know where I'd be. So whoever put me forward for SameYou, please let me know, and I'll cook dinner for you.
I've started a company Luke and I did about 18 months ago, and it's basically a smart platform to help support memory and kind of deliver little nuggets of rehabilitation to neurorehabilitation to people.
90% of rehab is done at home anyway.
Brain injury is not an ending, it's the beginning of something new. Everyone's gone through this life-changing experience, and I think it brings people very close together.
It's a feeling of being quite helpless, a feeling of losing that control, and a feeling of grieving a part of yourself that you've lost, which is hard. But I think it can make you a stronger person if you learn to live without that side of yourself. You find new ways of moving, of thinking, of being, and in a way that's quite liberating and that's quite empowering. And I think somebody who's gone through a brain injury or something like that sees the world and experiences the world in a different way to everybody else, and in a sense I think that's really powerful.
I now have belief. My future's filled with possibility, and that's everything. Possibilities that I couldn't dream of a couple of years ago. And it means I can keep going.